Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 511, My Big Toe, by Thomas Campbell, Part 5. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I'll continue with My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. Here, the author looks at the nature of reality and possible insights into, a vague purpose of our life. Today's show will feature background footage from along the Blue Ridge Parkway in Asheville, North Carolina. There's one section of the parkway just north of Sweeten Creek Road where, on the right side of the parkway as you're heading north, there's a large area of devastation. It looks like a tornado hit there. I crawled across some of it and filmed. Then I filmed later on the Mountains to Sea Trail, just south of Hendersonville Road. Here, there were a lot of trees to cross as well. So now, let's continue with My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. All beings in N, P, M, R, subset N, are not space and time constrained. Time and space are local constructs within PMR and are direct artifacts of the space-time rule set. Every being in our PMR is extant in NPMR, subset N. The converse is not true. Though you live, operate, and function in NPMR, subset N, as well as PMR, you may be unaware of it because of the constraints you place on the awareness of your consciousness. The ramifications of a continuous interrelated reality structure between PMR and NPMR will be explored in Chapter 84, Book 3, where we discuss communications, time travel, teleportation, multiple bodies, getting along without your body, and a few other interesting subjects. These topics need to be deferred until later because we have not yet developed the conceptual base required for understanding them. Be patient. Many interesting things lie ahead of us in subsequent chapters. To get there too quickly is equivalent to not getting there at all. Now, let's go to page 488 and continuing on to page 489 of My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. The door of your mind must be open at least a crack before you are likely to notice the passageway to a more complete conscious awareness and step through it to investigate what lies on the other side. If you have the courage to seek the truth, the My Big Toe trilogy is meant to facilitate the opening of such a crack in the belief barrier constructed by the ego mind. A primary goal of My Big Toe is to help you get your big toe, or perhaps your entire foot, wedged into your mind's door to prevent it from slamming closed before you are able to explore the true nature of your consciousness. This is more difficult than it first appears because you are easily seduced by your cultural, scientific, religious, and personal beliefs to seek the habitual comfort and refuge in the safe bliss that ignorance creates. Delusion, like a drug addiction, is a habit that is difficult to break. Now, let's continue on page 508 of My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. Our choice of words, artificial, to describe derived, we created it. Intelligence reveals an attitude, a belief that limits our thinking. The quality and capacity of an AI implementation reflects our knowledge and limitations, as well as the limitations and constraints we purposely impose to make the overall simulation serve our purpose. Additionally, it is contained by the limitations of the hosting technology itself. All those things are true of us as well. We are also a derived intelligence, limited within our reality in the same way the AI guy is limited within his. Computer scientists will construct AI implementation as a tool to help us do or learn something. AUM would say the same thing about us. We too have been designed and created with a purpose. AI guy will one day provide a contrasting background that enables us to more fully and clearly see ourselves in the foreground. He can teach us about the characteristics, properties, and processes of digital consciousness, evolution, intelligence, and the dynamics of personality, and he could learn from us as well. It would appear that we and AI guy will interactively evolve together, each helping the other to expand beyond present limitations. Though AI guy is, at least initially, a creation or derivative of our consciousness, intelligence, and awareness, he represents a microcosm of digital consciousness in general. Once we give him enough complexity, capacity, self-modifying control, and feedback to evolve his choice-making independence to the point where he is clearly conscious, we might begin to see something of ourselves reflected in his artificial digital being and begin to realize the discrete, cellular, digital nature of our own consciousness, of all consciousness. Now, let's go to page 511. All consciousness is non-physical, while consciousness containers may appear to be physical or non-physical. We have the souls. We do because we are primarily non-physical beings. We are created as individuated units of consciousness within the virtual reality of NPMR, or non-physical matter reality. Then we project a fragment of that individuated consciousness into a second order virtual physical reality called PMR. Recall from an earlier discussion, beginning of chapter 30, book 1, that there are smaller simulations, subroutines, running within larger simulations, that dimensions exist within other dimensions, and that realities can and do contain sub-realities. As long as each reality is allocated its own calculation space and self-consistent rule set, there is no conflict. Within the consciousness evolution fractal, one level generates another, which generates another, just as we will one day generate AI Guy from within PMR. PMR computers, unlike people, are created as physical entities within PMR and may develop non-physical sentient consciousness only after their physical creation. Because they are created within PMR, they initially come with no pre-existing sentient non-physical part or soul. However, once we and they together evolved their container to support sufficient complexity and self-modification, and they evolved their consciousness to a sufficient degree within that container, there is no reason that their non-physical part, soul, cannot become as significant as our own. Such a computer would be on the same RWW net as all sentient consciousness, and if we and it were sufficiently aware, we would be able to converse with it telepathically. It is if its body, hardware, and software are destroyed in PMR, it would remain alive and well within an PMR, able to continue its evolution by whatever means were at its disposal, not necessarily within PMR if that were not backed up and subsequently reinstalled. Now, let's go to page 525 of My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. The fundamental process, our second and final basic assumption, is necessary and sufficient to drive the interactive dynamics of an evolving consciousness. Recall that the existence of a fundamental pervasive consciousness potential is our first basic assumption. See chapter 24, book 1. From the creative union of these two assumptions, all reality flows, and your big toe grows, and the green grass grows all around, and the green grass grows all around. Now, let's go to page 526. Logically, AUM could achieve the greatest rate of evolutionary profitability by running many experiments in parallel. Multiple simultaneous experiments would most quickly and effectively evolve the constraints, player definition, processing power, memory, data collection, and purpose as reflected by the conditionals within each competing algorithmic rule set, leading to the highest evolutionary rates of returns and greatest overall profits. Furthermore, AUM could easily evolve or modify constraints on the fly, thereby fine-tuning such experiment as it unfolds to produce the best, most evolutionary, profitable results. Like any aware AI guy, AUM must selectively incorporate the lessons learned from all experiments into each experiment, being careful not to upset ongoing evolutionary processes or violate critical experimental protocols. AUM competency as the original AI guy is not an issue. We can be confident that evolution will discover whatever is most useful or profitable to the overall AUM consciousness system. Now, let's go to page 536 of My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. Wow, AI guy contemplates the consequences of defining his own purpose and developing his own moral sense of right and wrong. Let us ponder the process of consciousness, examining and discovering its dynamic, interactive nature. Think big. Like an apparently infinite Mr. Cool cruising the thought waves, looking for a little action. Imagine that AUM introduced hundreds of millions of these individuated conscious entities into a closed, at least tightly controlled, system, because they each are interactive, unique, separate, and have free will. The system generates a huge number of possible interactions, with future interactions driven by past interactions. The fundamental process drives the system to explore the possibilities at its fingertips. Exploration, curiosity, inquisitiveness, and expanding into the available states are all expressions of the imperative to implement the fundamental process of evolution. As a self modifying system with positive feedback, it is AUM's nature, our nature, and the nature of consciousness to change, grow, and evolve toward more profitable states of being, self improvement, by lowering system entropy. A system with more personal power and capability implies more energy available to do the work of evolution. Now, let's go to page 570, continuing on to page 571. The underlying hidden assumption is that PMR is fundamental and basic, and that we, sentient conscious entities, are not. That the causal relationship flows from physical matter reality to our consciousness, that the outside world, PMR, causes our consciousness awareness, not the other way around. These folks believe that our consciousness is physically derived, an effect, not a cause. They think they are physical body machines, digital or analog, experiencing a virtual consciousness instead of a consciousness experiencing a virtual body. Determinism is birthed from the same erroneous paradigm because it assumes that physical experience defines the one universal reality. After that, consciousness and free will appear to be theoretically impossible. Science is securely stuck in that same belief trap and cannot find a solution that does not conflict with its core beliefs. Although belief in a universal physical reality appears reasonable from a PMR point of view, it is in fact exactly opposite from what is true. In a virtual reality, like PMR, what you experience is a rule based, derived, or computed reality, not a fundamental reality. Back in the real world of fundamental existence, consciousness is the one universal reality. Turn your cultural assumptions upside down and play it backward to find the secret message that will allow you to avoid this particular PMR bias. Instead of seeing us as derived from PMR, see PMR as derived from our experience. If AUM can create our experience within TBC, or the big computer, as we create the rule set that defines AI Guy's experience, then AUM and TBC can create PMR without breaking a sweat. They don't have to create mass or motion, only the experience of mass and motion. That is what a virtual reality is all about: creating experience. Now, let's go to page 573. Furthermore, there was a need to create a recyclable awareness that, by resetting itself periodically, could indefinitely accumulate the relatively rapid early growth that an evolving entity initially experiences. Such a recyclable awareness could maintain a relatively high growth rate while avoiding belief trapping itself into a mental corner by simply recycling itself through the PMR virtual experience trainer whenever its evolutionary growth rate becomes unacceptably slow. Though personal beliefs and fears are thus individually eliminated from cycle to cycle, cultural beliefs and fears are passed from generation to generation. Human culture and its history provide a record and a measure of our cumulative progress. Our space-time is implemented as one of many space-time rule sets within TBC. Its function is to constrain and guide the experience of the beings that inhabit it. Individual actions and interactions that take place within this constrained and focused experience space follow each actor's free will intent. Imagine a huge multiplayer simulation trainer. Now, let's go to page 576 of My Big Toe by Thomas Campbell. I wonder how long it took and how many false starts there were before the space-time rule set was fully evolved. Do you think AUM has it right this time? AUM might tinker with it a little here and a little there, but in general, the space-time manifold is on its own to evolve however it evolves according to the fundamental process. Recall from our discussion of AI Guy, that virtual reality rule sets occur at two distinct levels: higher level rules that define goals and purpose, and lower level rules that define local physics and causality. Now, let's go to page 581, continuing on to page 582. You come into this physical world, engage this particular PMR experience packet with an initial quality of consciousness, and then have the opportunity to improve it or degrade it. This quality factor represents your fearless capacity to love and your proclivity to form attachments to fear and ego delusion. It also represents the entropy level within your consciousness and the extent of your spiritual growth and maturation. When the PMR experience packet is exited, death of the physical body occurs, and one finds that all little picture facts, PMR specific knowledge, and pseudo facts, beliefs, are entirely perishable, whereas individual quality and big picture wisdom endures at the level of the oversoul. In the larger reality, the entity is defined by whatever degree of love, fear, and delusion that represents the sum total quality of that being. In some philosophic traditions, the idea of karma and reaping what you sow somewhat expresses this concept of a cumulative quality of being that can be improved by making prudent choices for the Casey Waters Show. Producer Casey Waters. Graphic editing Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 at CaseyWaters.com.